Guys, we have to get ready for this next speaker here. Hold on. Costume change, everybody. Costume change.
Yeah? Oh, okay.
By the way, these are legitimately my glasses. I was inspired.
You think they know who we're getting ready to introduce based on the glasses?
I think they might. We converted the lovable liberal. Do you know how long I've been trying to say that?
Feels pretty good, actually. I sort of like this. And the look sort of works for him, too, right? We ready to introduce our next guest? Well, are you guys ready for it? All right. Governor Rick Perry has devoted his adult life to creating prosperity and opportunity for families. As the 47th and longest-serving governor of the Lone Star State, he championed the conservative principles that have helped Texas become the economic powerhouse that it is today. Under Governor Perry's leadership, Texas created almost one-third of all new private sector jobs in the United States. Without the jobs Texas has created, since the end of 2007, the U.S. would be net negative more than 200,000 jobs. In addition to doing more than its part to boost our nation's economy, Texas and Governor Perry have recently been front and center on an issue that concerns us all, which of course is border security. This summer, Governor Perry acted decisively to protect the people of Texas and this country from an unprecedented surge in illegal crossings on the southern border. Governor Perry is a fifth-generation Texan and a veteran of the United States Air Force. And he is sort of one of those Texas Republicans that I think everybody sort of appreciates. He's a graduate of Texas A&M University. He and his childhood sweetheart, Anita, have two children, Griffin and Sydney, and a beautiful granddaughter. And I'll add, what I love about him is he's a big dog lover, too. He loves his doggies. Please welcome a great American, Texas Governor Rick Perry.
Brian Whitman. I asked Brian, I said, have you got your imitation down yet? You know, he does Whoopi and Joy Behar. I don't know if you all have kind of kept up with that. So I asked him, I said, have you gotten your Michelle Obama impression down yet? So he said he's working on it. So, anyway, thank you all for being here tonight, or this morning, I should say. It's night somewhere. And we've been moving across the country a lot here lately, so it's afternoon in the rest of the country. So, and it is very, very cold in Washington D.C. Very cold. But anyway, I want to warm it up just a little bit for you this morning as we go forward and kind of take you back in time a bit, and then. We'll come back to the present, but you know, when I think about this country, and on the eve of the American Revolution, Thomas Paine wrote, "The duty of a patriot is to protect his country from its government." And in 1776, our founding fathers, they rebelled against a distant crown and its edicts. They knew from experience that a government that was seated thousands of miles away was inherently out of touch with the needs and the concerns of the people. That it was government that was closer to home. It was government that was closer to home was more responsive. It was more responsible. Let's go forward a little bit to 2014. The American people once again performed the duty of a patriot in the face of a central government grown too large, too intrusive, and too restrictive. They said enough to federal overreach. They said enough to failed agencies that forgot the people that they serve. They said enough to economic misery and massive debt. And they elected the largest Republican majority in decades. And they gave Harry Reid a new title, Minority Leader. But our work's not done. Our work's not done. We have a president who continues to defy the mandate of voters and the safeguards of our constitutional checks and balances. You see, with his executive orders on Cuba, on immigration, his grandstanding on the Keystone Pipeline, he reminded us powerfully that our work is not done until we elect a Republican president in 2016. Now, it may surprise a few of you in here. I've been thinking a little bit about 2016. The choice we face is whether our country can endure a future that looks like our recent past, whether we're going to accept 1 in 5 Americans who are on food stamps, 1 in 10 Americans who's either unemployed or underemployed or too discouraged to even look for a job, whether we're going to accept these porous borders that we have, agencies that fail our heroes, that target our citizens, a world that's more dangerous because of the policies that we have are toothless. See, after a decade of discontent, the American people are looking for a new direction. They want real hope, real change, and real leadership. I happen to think it's time for leadership that creates opportunity for all, that revives the American dream for every American, that brings the American people together after this season of division. You know, when I was growing up on the farm 200 miles west of Fort Worth, Texas, in a little place called Paint Creek, the American dream was alive and it was well, even for those of us that didn't have a lot. My first few years, we didn't have running water in the house I lived in, but we never thought we were poor because we were rich in spirit, cow's milk, whatever we grew in the garden. We knew the promise of America was ours if we worked hard and we made something of ourselves. It used to be, if you were part of that burgeoning middle class in America, you had made it. You could move if you wanted to the suburbs. You could buy your own house. You could save for college. You could take a family vacation every summer if you wanted to. But it's not that way for the middle class anymore. See, opportunity and security have been replaced with worry and anxiety. Americans are working longer and trying to keep their heads above water because everything costs more. Out-of-pocket health costs, housing, college tuition, they all have gone up. Student debt is at an all-time high. Many of our Americans have lost their homes when the market collapsed in the middle of the last decade. A lot of people out there are worried it's going to happen again. It's time to restore hope and opportunity to middle-class Americans with common sense and economic reforms. Our tax code is a great example of it. This thing is a complete albatross around the necks of our people. It awards favor to the chosen few while it burdens the rest of America. And it's time to reform that. We got the highest tax burden, highest corporate tax rate in the Western world. You see, these high corporate taxes, they don't harm the CEO who can move millions of dollars around, move it offshore, whatever he needs to do. Who it harms is the middle income wage earner who loses his or her job. You realize that lowering those corporate taxes by 10% would increase the wages for that worker between 5 and 10%. I mean, that's what we need to be focused on. That's who we need to be talking to. We also have too many businesses that are swimming in red tape. They're unable to access credit from their community banks. Lending reforms that were aimed at Wall Street only serve to harm Main Street. We need to make credit more available. We need to make credit more available, not less so, to those small businesses. And we need to stop overregulation by Washington if we're ever going to bring jobs back to Main Street. Here's a little known fact about regulation. It cost every American family almost $15,000 a year. Nearly 23% of their average family income is because of regulation. As a matter of fact, if families filled out a budget and they listed all of their expenses, the cost of regulation would be second only to housing in annual cost. You see, this is how the liberal state sticks it to the middle class. Their ideas leave less in our pockets, and it puts more money into the hands of Washington bureaucrats. And instead of expanding the welfare state, we ought to be building the freedom state in this country. And I know for a fact that it can be done because we did it in my home state. And our formula was pretty simple. You control taxes and spending, you provide smart and predictable regulations, you develop an educated workforce, and you stop lawsuit abuse at the courthouse. Those are the 4 principles to create a foundation of economic prosperity. In the 14 years that I had the great privilege to be governor, we helped build the best economy in this country. We helped create nearly 1/3 of all the private sector new jobs during that entire period of time. As a matter of fact, in the last 7 years, we created 1.4 million jobs. As a matter of fact, if you back those jobs out, minus those jobs created in my home state, this country lost 250,000 jobs. I kept waiting for the president during his State of the State address to actually give me a shout out. Yeah. Maybe not, right? Yeah. Their media pundits have called what happened in my home state the Texas miracle. I don't call it that. Miracles cannot be explained or replicated. Economic recovery can. And it can happen anywhere. It can happen anywhere. It can happen in New York, and it can happen in Washington. It can even happen in California. I'm telling you, it can. And one of the fastest ways to create growth and opportunity is to tap into America's great energy potential. With the advent of all of this new technology that has allowed energy companies to access shale formations, America is now the largest producer of oil and gas in the world. We are larger than Russia. We are larger than Saudi Arabia. We haven't even begun to tap our potential yet. When our current leaders think about energy policy, it amounts to this long list of projects that we cannot begin, permits that we cannot grant, studies we cannot conclude, resources that we cannot use. I mean, come on. 6 years of study on the Keystone and nothing happens? We got dozens of liquefied natural gas permits still awaiting federal approval. We got more federal land and federal waters off limits to exploration. Now is the time for leadership. Leadership that doesn't view energy policies through this narrow prism of some partisan base. It needs to be based on what is best for all Americans. We need to reduce our reliance on these hostile foreign energy sources. We can create literally hundreds of thousands of energy jobs, and we need to deploy our arsenal of energy. I tell people, I said, listen, if energy is going to be a weapon, then we need to have the largest arsenal in this country. And we need to deploy that into Europe, into Asia, where our friends and our allies are, where they're being held hostage by a Russian president today. Our children will not inherit an America with greater opportunity if America continues to shrink away from our role in the world. You know, for too long, this administration has led from behind. They kind of lurched from crisis to crisis, guided by moral and strategic ambivalence. In response to the great evil that we face today, we need to summons up that spirit of old that led us to vanquish the communists and the fascists of the last century. Words didn't stop Putin. Red lines didn't deter Assad. And I'll suggest to you, diplomats will not contain Iran. The only thing that these tyrants respect are strength and resolve. We need to rebuild our military. We need to reassert our moral authority at home and overseas. Now is the time for moral clarity, not moral confusion. When we look at the Islamic State and all that goes with it, we need to understand we're dealing with a particular breed of fanaticism that leaves us very few options. And the short of it is that we have every right to judge and every reason to act. Amen, sister. And let me tell you why this matters. It matters that we understand this for one reason especially. Because without confidence in the truth and the goodness of our own values, that great moral inheritance of our own culture, how are we going to deal with the falsehood of theirs? And this is not a rhetorical question. The terrorist attack on that Jewish market in Paris, the burning alive of that young Jordanian pilot, The mass murder of those Coptic Christians on that beach in Libya reminded us what the face of evil really looks like. And the great moral imperative that we have to extinguish it. It's going to be up to America, to our allies. You see, what all these terrorist groups have in common is a disdain, and I should say a wish to destroy our Western way of life. And someone needs to tell them loud and clear that the meeting's already been held. And it was decided a long time ago, democratically I might add, that our societies will be governed by Western values and Western laws. But to every extremist, it has to be made clear, we are not going to allow you to exploit our tolerance so that you can import your intolerance. We are not going to let you destroy our peace with your violent ideas. And if you expect to live among us and yet plan against us, to receive the protections and the comforts of a free society while showing none of the virtues or its graces, then you can have your answer right now. No, never, not on our watch. See, just as we have this moral imperative to fight the enemies of Western society, we need to fight the evil also that seeks to exploit our porous border. See, when 70,000 unaccompanied minors showed up on the Texas border last summer, my greatest concern was the ability of those drug cartels, those transnational gangs, to exploit that human crisis. See, these are ruthless criminals. They traffic in drugs, in weapons, in people. The individuals that they smuggle, they're just a product to them. They could care less that that's a human soul. And way too many of those individuals, those human souls, have been left to die in the Texas desert. And that is exactly the threat that led me to take action and deploy the Texas National Guard to the border last summer. For years, I had notified Washington of what was going on, what the potential was. As a matter of fact, last summer, I invited the president to join me to see it firsthand. If you'll recall, he had asked me to come and meet him on the ramp when he came to. He was on a very important mission to Dallas to help fundraise for needy Democrats. And I told him, I said, I'll come, Mr. President, but I'm not going to be on the ramp just as a photo op. I'll sit down with you. I'll talk to you. I really need for you to see what's going on. But he told me he didn't do photo ops. Seriously. That's what he said. Which really shocked that big gaggle of photojournalists that travels all around with him. Became abundantly clear that the president was not interested in securing our border. And here's what I told the president of the United States. I said, if you do not secure the border. Texas will. And that's what we did. And it's had a powerful impact. And I might add, the situation on the border is a bipartisan failing. Just as President Obama should have seen it coming and acted, Congress has been aware of this problem for years, and they did nothing. And that's kind of the problem with Congress, if you want to know the truth of the matter. It has become this debating society. They think about problems, they talk about problems, but they don't solve them. And people die in the process. It's time for the President and Congress to work together. No more lawless executive orders, Mr. President. No more preening for the cameras. Let's get together. Let's solve the problems of this country. And start by securing the border. Americans are starving for leadership. Leadership that will act and solve the great challenges that we face today. They want to believe again. They want to hope again. And I don't happen to believe that we are consigned to a fate of lesser dreams and fewer opportunities. I believe the best is yet to come. I think we're just a few things away from an incredibly brighter future. If we reassert our strength abroad and once again signal to the Western world that we are the greatest security partner they could ever have. If we rebuild our military so that our enemies are not tempted to test us and our allies are secure in the knowledge that they can rely upon us. If we revive our economy, reforming and lowering the taxes, reducing regulations, reviving the golden age of manufacturing in this country again. If we reform the institutions of government, ending this disgrace of the IRS going after our citizens for political reasons, a Veterans Administration that has absolutely failed our heroes. If we secure our border with Mexico, we uphold the rule of law. If we do these things, then America's best days are in front of us. You know, I may have a quarrel or two with my government, but I love my country. And there is nothing wrong with America today that cannot be fixed with new leadership. I see a future in America where our skilled workers can find a job, where wages are on the rise and opportunities on the march. An America where opportunity is the birthright of all, not just dispensed by government to a select few. An America that leads the world again, that stands with its allies again, where citizens can dream again. An America worthy of our founders' ideals and our children's dreams. So starting today, let's roll up our sleeves, let's get to work, and let's revive the American dream. God bless you. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for the difference that you're going to make in this great country of ours. God bless you.